everyone, and welcome to The Composer's Life. I'm Nadia, your host, and today we continue the series of interviews with professors and chairs at Berklee College of Music. Our guest today is an award-nominated composer for motion picture media, a songwriter and music producer, and an Emmy-winning re-recording mixer and sound designer. As a young keyboard player, he toured Europe, then moved to Los Angeles to study with Carl Schroeder and Kat Gray. He has composed music for more than 50 studio film trailers, including Indiana Jones' Crystal Skull, Fantastic Four, and Cheaper by the Dozen. His music has also been used for Monday Night Football and the international launch campaign of PlayStation 3. He has composed for many more films, documentaries, theater, and classical performances. And he has had the pleasure of working with Academy Award-winning directors Sidney Pollack and Douglas Trumbull. Welcome today to Claes Nystrom, a professor in the film scoring department at Berklee. Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Composer's Life. I'm Nadia, your host, and today we have another professor from Berklee joining us. Welcome to Claes Nystrom.
So let me do that. Thank you, Nadia. I'm doing quite well. How are you? Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited to interview you today and get to know your career and everything better, and thanks for making the time to be here. I guess we'll just start from the beginning. What got you into music in the first place?
Grandpa's piano. He would tell you I was 3. I was playing tunes that I had no business knowing how to play. I think I was more like 5. And then at age 6, I had a relative come over and play. And since then, I think certainly I've known since 9 when I heard uh, Deep Purple live, made in Japan, a live record. When I heard John Lord's intro to, I think it was Highway Star. I forget which song it was, but anyway, I knew at that time that this is what I'm gonna do. And so since then, I've been, I've known.
Did your grandpa play piano, or did he just have it and you just went up to it?
Yeah. They had one. He didn't really play. Neither did my grandma, but they had one, and I played it. And so I think he told my parents at that point that they should get me something, and they got this Yamaha electric organ that sounded absolutely horrible with the foot pedal and the whole thing. And yeah, so that's what I started out with. I started playing. I started playing songs that I knew, that I remembered, and I remember watching my relative playing it and seeing what he did, and so I tried to do that, and kind of never stopped.
At what point did you decide to pursue music professionally? And also, did your parents have you start taking lessons or anything at a certain point, or did you just do it yourself?
Well, they tried to get me into lessons, and I did take some lessons, but they were lessons in playing the electric organ, which I wasn't so interested in. And so when I turned 15, I got a synthesizer, and I joined a band. And so at that point, I was in a band with some people who were a little older than me, and it was really cool and exciting. And we played original songs, and it was still a hobby at that age. But then a year or two later, 16 or 17, I did my first professional gig, playing a gig with a friend of mine. And from 18 and on, it picked up. And by the time I was 21, that was the main thing that I did, or 22, playing gigs. And then I left for Los Angeles in 1994, when I was 24.
When you went to Los Angeles, did you have someone who had reached out to you? Like, did you have a job, or did you just go hoping to find something?
Well, I went because I was going to Musicians Institute, and I'd been told that I should go there because of 2 teachers that people who had been there thought that I would love. Carl Schroeder, who was the jazz piano teacher, former MD of Sarah Vaughan and so on in the 60s, and Kat Gray, who was the doctor out of Prince's band, who was a groove sort of player. Both incredible teachers and musicians, and that's why I went. So I literally left with 2 suitcases and a few $100, and went to school for a year, which turned out to be a year and a half. I was just going to study. I wasn't going to play with anyone, because the only thing I hadn't done as a kid was to practice. And so everybody else did around me suddenly, and I figured, okay, I'll go for a year and practice, and I won't play with anyone. But after about 6 months, I was in 7 bands, and I had produced a record, and I was playing live gigs on the side, and I fell into my old habits very quickly. But I didn't want to leave, so here we are, 30 years later, and I'm still here.
Wow. So you weren't going to play with anyone, but you ended up doing a lot. How did that happen? Did you just start meeting people and
Yeah, yeah. I started playing, when you play in school with people who you like to play with, and some of them had gigs on the outside, and dragged me into that. And after a while, I was playing gigs on the outside, and I was playing a lot of gigs at school with a lot of school bands. And we flew up to record a record in Northern California in a really great studio with a band that I ended up later producing and working with for many years. Actually, the guitar player in that band ended up being my composing colleague in our business that we had in LA when we later started doing trailer scores.
what do you think made helped you be so successful while you were there?
Oh God, I don't even know if you can say that I was, but yes, I guess on some level we had. That's a tough question. It's a combination of a lot of things. I think, um, you know, they say opportunity or preparation, and preparation meets opportunity type of thing. So yes, I was prepared and ready maybe, but I don't think you're ever ready, because you always do gigs that are above what you think that you can do. That's kind of how LA works. You kind of just got to do it. And I would say probably not being scared of it was or being dumb enough not to have enough respect for it, or ignorant enough not to be scared of it, and having this sort of, I don't really know where that comes from, but that belief that you can do it somehow, I think served us really, really well many times where we had really no business doing certain things, but we did it anyway. So I think that naivete or ignorance has served me well throughout my life.
I love that. Yeah, I felt very naive when I started school at Berklee. I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is not what I expected." But it definitely pushes you when you're around people that maybe you don't feel like you're at the same level with. It really pushes you to get better yourself. So I love that.
Other people raise the bar for you, and then when they do, you see what they do, and then you kind of think that you can clear it too if you just stick with it. And I think so. I think there's a certain level of stick to itiveness also that's really, really, really important. Not getting knocked down too hard when you miss a gig, because there's going to be plenty of others coming right around the corner.
Hmm. So, at what point did you open a business with your colleague?
Oh wow, that was in 2000. Well, we started doing loose gigs on the side. 1996 was the first trailer I did. That was for let's see, it was for U-Turn, I think, with Sean Penn. And then we did no, 187 was the first one with Sam Jackson, and then we did U-Turn with Sean Penn, and then we did The Game after that, Michael Douglas film. Um, so we were lucky. We got like three over the course of a year and a half. We got three of those small little jobs from this one trailer house. And at that point, it started to pick up. But I had another job at the same time to keep my working permit as a sound designer, mixing the sound for movies and creating sounds for films. And so in 2003, we got a big trailer job for Cheaper by the Dozen with Steve Martin, and had a great pleasure of getting to do a Beatles cover for the song "Help" that they used in the trailer, and then they wanted us to record it again, so we got paid enough to where I said I gave my resignation notice to my sound designing job, which was my full-time employment at the time, and I simply took the risk. I decided now's the time to jump, and from that point on, things took off, because then it was full time in composing. And so for a while there, it was really good. We scored a trailer every now and then, and didn't have to work super hard in between. But when we worked for days on end, you know. So it's kind of like being the composing fire truck for a couple of film studios. They called us when they had last minute panic situations. Can you replace this? Absolutely, you know.
Wow.
And so we were lucky in that sense that we had a direct connect that gave us a lot of work.
So before you actually went into composing, you were doing sound designing?
Yeah, well, I actually the other way around. Before I did sound design, I did composing. That's how why they hired me for the sound design, because they had heard my music mixes. But yeah, as soon as I could, I went back to music only. You know, that's always been my first love. You know.
Oh, yeah, I was going to ask that. Which one you prefer to do? What do you like about sound design? Or do you like it? Did it just happen?
Well, loaded question. No, it's okay. You know, delivering. I've learned a lot from doing sound design for films, because when you do sound design for films, you need to deliver on time. You need to be regimented with file handling, you know, all the standards you need to know, because if you can't deliver, you're not a professional yet. And so I really learned the power of delivery, and also other things like knowing how to create unity gain stems and why and how that works. A lot of technical things that I could really take from and learn from and apply to my composing process. So I certainly would not know how to think storytelling the way that I do unless I had sat through, I don't know, 30, 40 films with directors and producers behind my back or next to me, you know, explaining how they saw their film and how the story should be told. And so I think I drew a lot of knowledge from that I can apply straight to my composing process. Um, and I love working with people in a team like that, where you have, you know, from on one movie there were 12 of us, you know, doing this movie. And so there's a lot of things that I love about it. But there's nothing like that exciting world of creating the emotional narrative together with how the actors are expressing things, and based on what the director says and how you compute all of that. Is sort of like this um, amazing equation of artistry that you need to be an empath in a way toward the audience. You also need to be empathetic toward the director, of course, because that's what the story originally stems from. You also have to be reflective of how the actors are doing up there. And also, you got to put yourself into it in your way that feels authentic to you. All of those things together is this just mesmerizing puzzle that I can never get tired of. And so, my short answer would be that I love music more. But there's a lot of things in the sound designing process that I've learned from that I can really use when I work with somebody writing music for the film.
So you did a little bit of sound design and then went into composing, basically.
Well, yeah, well, I did 6 years of like 80-hour weeks, so it's not really just a little bit, but
A lot
yes,
of it.
not really 80-hour weeks all the time, but you know, above 100 and sometimes 120-hour weeks, you know, where you barely sleep. And in the long run, it's not sustainable, you know. But I was lucky enough to work on projects that got recognition and things like that. So, you know, it wasn't all without doubt that I left it, because it could have I could have continued that career for the rest of my life if I wanted to, but I actually wanted to do just music, and so that's why I left it as soon as I could,
Yeah,
kind
you
of.
have to be authentic to what your dream actually is.
Yes, but then again, you know, the last two films that I scored for the late Douglas Trumbull, director here in Massachusetts, that I really loved working with. Um, I did both the sound and the music for his two latest films, and I've done that on other projects too. When they ask me if I will go back and do sound design again, so for a few clients that I really love working with, I don't really care which part of it I do, or if I do both, it's even more fun, because then I get to have more of my fingers in the game, you know, and it's kind of really fun when you get to design the whole sonic experience, you know, that's really a lot of fun.
When you have a project like that where you're doing both, do you have to kind of separate the composing from the sound design, like mentally for yourself, or do you kind of combine everything?
No, I separate it. It's like I wear a different hat different day. So when I do the sound design, I get into delivery mode and boom, 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 I knock it all out and I design and I build it. And then I know when I'm doing it, which is makes it so much easier, what I'm going to do, what the composer is going to do, since that's me too. So at that point, I can sort of be smart about where I spend my time because I know that this is going to be this and that with the music, where music will drive this because it's an emotional moment, let's say. Or I will know as a composer that, hey, this is a busy, intricate sequence where a lot of things need to be literal and explained with sound because there's so much going on this, so much information coming at you that I can relax on the composing side because I know how much I'm covering, how much attention I'm taking up from the audience's brains, by all the other stuff that's going on. So doing both makes it more efficient on both ends.
I bet it's cool to be able to kind of craft the sound to fit the music and vice versa as well. That must be a really cool process.
Yes, it's super fun when it's you doing all of it. Then you can kind of, and if there's trust, of course, between you and the director, and they give you the free hands that you want, so there's only a few people that I do sound for these days, but yeah, yeah, it's both are fun.
So, going back to earlier in your career, when you did decide to just pursue composing, how did it feel? Were you really excited because you were finally doing what you really wanted to be doing? Were you scared? What kind of things were you feeling?
Well, yeah, both. It's both exciting and scary. The scary part is that when you're a young or a new composer, you may. I was crafting a lot more than I was arting, which from our classes is something that I distinguish between the two very seriously, actually, in my process. But in the beginning, you don't. It's the imposter syndrome thing. You don't see yourself as a composer yet. You see yourself as somebody who is, or at least in my case, as somebody who aspires to one day become one. You know, and so when you're writing for these things in the beginning, you're just hoping that you can hold up your end and it'll pass as composing. you know
Hmm.
and then after a while, when you get used to it and people say it's okay and stuff, and then after a while you start accepting that, okay, I'm a composer. Um, but I don't really know exactly when that shift happens. In my career, I know that it happened in 1998 in this one weird light bulb moment, where I learned how to write like me. But getting to apply all of that into the projects that you do in LA, especially, where it's very much replace the temp track. Can you make it sound like this? Can you make it sound like this? Can you do it in half an hour? Can you send it tomorrow morning? How soon can you have the full orchestra tomorrow?
Well,
you know,
hmm
and so I lost my train of thought here. But what was your question again?
how you felt? Oh, you were talking about distinguishing when you felt like you were a composer, I think, and talking about imposter syndrome.
Yes, thank you. So as you try to I didn't realize it took me a while because I kept on just making what they asked, and they never asked me what I thought, and I got annoyed with that after a while. And maybe I shouldn't have, but I did. um, I found that I wasn't being utilized. My what I thought I had going on, nobody asked for, and they just wanted me for production skills and what I consider now being craft and skill. And that's okay. When I realized that that's okay, that that's how you make money, by crafting, then I can go home and art on my own little movie if I want. I know that it's not a real verb, but I'm using it that way because I think of it that way. And so it took a while until it was actually this one director who said, and that's one of the guys I still work for to this day. We've worked together now since 2009 or 2006. One of my favorite directors in the world, Micah Chambers Goldberg is his name. He makes all kinds of cool stuff, music videos for Eric Clapton, and he makes his own movies and things. He's absolutely brilliant. He was the one who asked me. He said, "I want you to score my movie, but I don't want to hear you do the Hollywood, trailer thing, because I hear that on every movie, and I just want you and a piano."
Was that a relief?
Uh-huh. It was the most fun project I could ever dream of getting.
Hmm.
And so That's the first one where somebody said, "No, I don't want to put expectations on you. I just want to see what you come up with if you get to do your thing," which was really a blessing because then I got to try my own wings and I got to realize that, okay, so even if we do remove all the craft and the skill, I still got it, still has legs. And so that was an important film for me in gaining the confidence that I can do this kind of thing on my own.
How did you and him meet?
At a party.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, at a party. Actually, it was a children's party because my neighbors happened to have a kid who was also 3 months old, like my son. And when so we became friends with the neighbors, and then when they both turned one, 10 days apart, for the neighbors' kids party, their nanny, her husband, is the guy who ended up being. So we ended up talking the whole for like 3 hours, and then we said, let's meet and let's see if we can do something together.
I feel like everyone's has a story where they just meet someone in some sort of life situation that has nothing to do with work.
That's often the case, often the case. And also that is actually one of the things that I think is super important that we don't talk enough about, like staying active in the community, letting other composers know that you exist. I got more work from other composers than I got from directors and producers always, because they would always call and say, "Hey, man, I'm busy. Are you available? Or can you help me do half of this? Or um, I heard of this job. I can't take it. Are you interested?" Um, so that's really one thing I would recommend to anybody young out there who's starting out, to be active in the community. Let people know you exist and let them know what you do. It doesn't have to be pretentious. It can be as simple as, hey, let's meet and play each other's stuff. It can be on Zoom, can be whatever, in person preferably, but just letting people know what it is that you do, so that there's an awareness of your existence and what your abilities. Sooner or later, one of them will call you and say, "Hey, I have this thing. Are you around?"
How do you suggest that people initially meet people in the community?
Just be authentic and reach out to the one person even if it's just one. They know another person, and that other person knows another person, and so on, right? And so I think being authentically you with everybody you meet, and just try to be good people, treat people the way you want to be treated and stuff like that. Simple basic things, humanity based things. um, but then also not being scared of telling them what you do, and presenting your work when you get an opportunity. um, I don't look at it as networking. I think of it more as you hang out with your people who do what you do, and then eventually you all get to know what all of you do, and then everybody recommends everybody when it's a good time to do so. So I think all of those things happen the best way if they're organic, if they're happening in like a natural way without anybody pushing themselves onto anything.
Do you have a favorite movie or trailer or project that you've composed for?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I would say out of all the trailers we did, the one that was the most fun was Fantastic Four. We were lucky enough to get to write, if you disregard Spider-Man in the 70s, the first piece of music that was ever in a Marvel film from 2000 and onward was our music in the teaser for Fantastic Four. And it was a crazy assignment because we were asked to replace a piece by Don Davis from The Matrix, and it was a huge operatic piece, and they needed it in a couple of days. And we didn't really know what to do with the chorus and stuff because we didn't have budget for that. It's just the two of us. And so we called in three ladies from the local, somebody, the neighbor knew them from the church choir. And and then we hired one professional opera singer, a friend of ours. She's great. So we put her a little louder than the rest of them. And then we had these big, really stupid sounding choir sounds from the computers, and behind that to get the size, but just low enough so that we couldn't really hear how bad they sounded. And then my business partner is a great singer, so he did the male parts, of the choral. part. And then we realized as we were writing it that, geez, they're going to sing. We need words. What language? Wait a minute. We need lyrics, you know?
Not just the music part.
Yeah. So I looked at my business partner. I said, do you know Latin? It's a rhetorical question. He didn't know. And you don't either. I'm like, no, I don't. Um, Wait a minute. Do they know Latin, the client? And he said, no, you're not. And I said, yeah, let's do it, man. So we made up words that sounded like Latin, but it's not. It means absolutely, it's total gibberish. I think we came up with Volte Solum, Volte Decum, Dario Vindigo Spiritu Va that's the lyric. Means absolutely nothing, but it sounds like Latin. And so we did it. We had all these the few singers we hired, we had them sing that, and we sent it in, and I got them approved. And so that was sort of like a mountain to climb that we did in a few days, and it ended up sticking and working, and we got paid and all that. So I think that's a favorite of mine, that'll never go away because of how weird it was.
I like the juxtaposition between like such a huge film and then just the way that that was all brought together was just so simple. That's really cool. It's a good story.
In a garage studio, which was an advanced garage studio, but still, yeah.
Yeah. So when you and your partner composed together, did you kind of divvy up sections or scenes, or did you work together on everything?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was actually a little bit different on different things. He was a guitar player and a bass player and a really great singer, So whenever we needed vocals and guitar and bass, I would be more of in the recording, producing, arranging role, and he would be the player, but also the idea guy to a very large extent. And then on some other things which were more keyboard based or orchestra based, I would not that he didn't do that. We both did both, but I think we always found a way to divvy it up. But one thing that we never that we were really democratic about was the creative process of actually deciding what we were going to do. So we would sit together and discuss, which is really unusual and really cool, actually. When you watch the picture that you're about to score, we would sit and we would listen. We would listen in our heads without saying anything and without playing anything. We would just watch that 30 seconds of that trailer over and over again, or a minute, or whatever it was. And as soon as we had an idea, we would always, the first idea, how about if we come in with brass here? Because it goes grand here in the scenery. Let's go back and watch it again. And then the other would say, what about we may need some percussion entry here, because this is a big moment, and maybe this is where we kick it all into gear. How about ostinato strings somewhere around here? Okay, let's go back. So we would watch it over and over again and talk about what we were going to do until we knew what we both thought was the right thing to do. And then we would always say, okay, cool, we're done, but not one note recorded yet, but we knew exactly what we were going to do. At that point, it didn't really matter to us who was going to do what, because we had already had the creative process in advance. So that's sort of how we managed to never get, we're still friends to this day. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Good
yeah,
things happened
yeah,
between you.
yeah,
So I guess a lot of that process was just planning things out before you actually sat down and started.
yeah. You know me, hearing it in your head first.
Yeah. So when you get a film now or a project to compose for, do you still work with him, or do you mainly do things by yourself?
Well, since I moved to Boston, we sort of split things up because it became too big of a distance. He's still in LA, and so he's still doing things in the same vein. But we still talk and stuff, and we will surely do something together again. He might lay down guitars now on one of my songs that I'm writing, and so we're still in contact, but we're not working like that as a unit anymore.
What brought you to Boston?
Family. So it was sort of out of necessity, for the sake of my kids, and so that's the very short story. Yeah.
Were you looking forward to moving to Boston, or were you kind of sad to be leaving LA?
A little bit of both, but I would have liked to stay, But again, the times that I've had here with my kids, I wouldn't want to have them undone, but I realized fairly quickly that being a film composer in Boston is kind of like being a lobsterman in Kansas.
That is a really good analogy.
It's true.
So when you got to Boston, what did you do? Did you have a job as well when you moved there, or?
No, I didn't. And at the time, something was going to happen here called Hollywood East, and it ended up being a big scam. Um, and so, long story short, that thing that I had hoped for being sort of my landing pad ended up being ripped away before we landed.
Wow.
Yeah, and so at that point, I was at a loss actually. So I started teaching at CDIABU, and then I taught at RISD, and I gave guest lectures at Berklee with one professor in the MP&E department over and over again about film sound, but only guest lectures. And eventually, I got an interview in the film scoring department, which somebody else got. And then 4 years later, I got another phone call from Allison, who was the chair at the time, and they said they needed me, and can you start in 2 weeks? And then I had 6 classes suddenly, teaching Scoring Tech 1 and Scoring Tech 2. So it happened very quickly, and it's been 8 years now. Harkening back to your previous question, though, I didn't really answer it. The way I work today, when I start with a director, when I'm working with them myself, so Doug Trumbull, for instance, those 2 last films, and even before that, I did a co-writing thing, and at that point, I was asked to just in both of those projects, or all those 3 projects, to just do my thing, which is the most wonderful thing that can happen. And so I actually wrote the music first, before the filming and before the finalizing of the words, the dialogue. And so, based on storyboards and scripts and information given verbally, I wrote the music based on those descriptions, and then I told them what I meant with the music in what places, and then they adapted it to that, which is a really, really wonderful way for me to work. So that's my favorite way of working these days, is to write the music first.
What do you draw inspiration from when you do it like that? Is it the script story sort of thing, or?
Yeah, yeah, and also, the director will tell you what they're going for and what needs to happen in the music, and so then you make that happen, and then you tell them, this is that thing that you wanted, this is happening right here, and then we go, okay. And so I found on the last film with Doug, it was fantastic. I had this long speech about on the phone with him. Can we do it the way that Ennio Morricone and Sergio Leone did it on the spaghetti westerns, where we write the music first and you play that for the actors on the set, and then made my case that the emotional narrative is most strongly spoken by the expression of the actors and also the music. And so if the music is there before they act, you get that acting back into your editing, put my music on it, send it back to me, and I'll adjust it. And so by the end of that process, everything was sort of tailored to my music in a way, but also which was derived from what he told me was going to happen in the stories. It's not like I made it up, but that type of collaboration is really, really interesting to me, more so than can you make this.
When you have to do it the other way, like what are the differences in the creative process?
Yeah, the difference is that they have usually always used temporary music. So if it's somebody who's working on a movie, um, if it's a bigger thing where they're worried about their quarterly report, they're worried about the movie making the money back, all of those things come into play, and then they get nervous sometimes. And a lot of producers, directors, they want to control it and make sure that it doesn't bomb, and so they might select music from some other film that recently was a hit, and then tell you to please replicate that because they know that that would be a safe bet. And it perhaps is, but to me that's not so interesting anymore to do. When I was younger, I didn't mind spending my whole day as a craftsman and trying to meet that bar of production level, or composing level, whatever it is. Uh, but then after a while, you kind of, at least in my case, I wanted to put my own imprint on things, and making sound alikes becomes less and less interesting the older you get, and I'm really old now.
So it's extremely boring.
No, no, but it's not what I prefer to do. So if I could do it the other way, I'd like to do it the way that I feel more comfortable when I'm working with the director as opposed to for them.
When you receive the script and you're working in that way, what's the first thing you do? I guess, what are the steps you take in your writing process? Like, do you go directly to a keyboard and start coming up with ideas? What do you kind of do?
No, I actually, it's been weird. Recently, I've written the music before I get the phone call, which I can't really say is a good method. So it turns out that I figure out when I get the job why I had written that music last week. It's been like that actually on my last three projects where I can't figure out how this is happening. Um, but I think it's different on everyone because every person you work with is different. And you got to be sensitive, of course, to, if you're putting music onto somebody else's art. It's kind of like if you were if an architect built a house and you're an interior designer, you got to be respectful to the space, but at the same time you got to add you to it, and so I think that is done based on the people, differently for me, with different people. But if there's a good storyboard and if there's a good script, if there's somebody who's good at explaining what it is that they're after, then I can sort of parse through those pieces of information, and then I start digging in my head. I don't write from the piano still to this day. Sometimes I do. I like to not have any rules like that, but for the most part, if I can hear it in my head, it seems to be always more true than if I sit down and start noodling. Noodling scores is not what I like to do. So I like to really hear as much of it as possible in my head first, because then it's sort of done. I hum it into my phone. It sounds terrible, but the main compositional decisions, that you heard instinctively in that moment, oftentimes it's in my car driving home from a meeting. uh, I sing it into the phone, and then I know, okay, so this is 6/8, and it's, in this and that key. It modulates over here, whatever it might be that happens in your head, uh, is really, like, if you just hum it into your phone, all of that information is there, and it's very simple from that point on to add the right chords and the right bass lines and the right arrangements, and you select what instruments you need for this film and so on. And so, yeah, I like to hear it as much as possible in my head first, and then hum it into my phone, because that way it's sort of done. I don't have to worry about what it was that I heard in that moment. It's sort of all in there. The tempo, big compositional decisions like tempo and things like that.
What are some of the more recent projects that you've been working on?
Well, um, I don't know if I should bring it up, but I did win an Emmy in 2021 for a sound mix that we did for a speech by Nixon that Nixon never gave. And it ended up being called the first real deepfake. The Department of Homeland Security deemed it this type of technology the biggest threat to any democracy. We actually mentioned it was done with together with MIT. So MIT filmed an actor and put sensors on his face who was a Nixon impersonator, and they recorded him the same way that Nixon would have been recorded in a similar room. And they then superimposed those lip movements onto and facial movements onto Nixon's face in that address room. And so he's literally giving his speech saying that they all died on the moon and may they rest in peace up there. And the moon landing was a disaster. So the project is called In Event of Moon Disaster, and my job was to do the final mix. And so we did an installation thing where it was supposed to be, and this may be off topic here, but it was supposed to be in at Tribeca, but it was during COVID. And so it was supposed to be an installation thing where you sat in a room that looked like a 1969 living room. and we had made a 5.1 surround sound reverb for that type of living room, and so it would feel like you were really sitting in that living room watching that TV. And so we won in Tribeca, we won in Cannes, we won a Webby Award, we won the Emmy, natural Emmy for interactive, I guess. So it was very, very exciting to be a part of something like that. But again, it was a sound design, you know. So.
It's impressive. And you have a lot of background in sound design, so it's definitely something to be proud of.
Yes, yes, indeed, indeed, absolutely. It was. I said to my kids that it won't change me. You know, what if they would have told me? But then I opened the box and the Emmy was shining and the angels were singing, and I had to sit down.
Wow, I bet that felt really good.
Yeah, and it makes you stop for a second and a little humble pie. You know, um, also it's one of those things that my mentor, that I learned how to do sound design from, had just passed away. So it was sort of a thing where it was great, but in a way, I wish I could have shared it with him.
Hmm.
You know, so that was cool, from a really exciting from a recognition and sort of getting that legitimacy stamp, ending the imposter syndrome kind of thing in a way, uh, and so on. You know, it's always good to get recognition, but at the same time, uh, music is still my really my first love, and so I'm not looking down upon that in any way, not in any way. But it would be great to because I think I'm better at music, but it's hard for me to say.
So, have you been working on anything with music lately?
Hmm. Yeah, this spring I went down in classes at Berklee, and it has really given me a lot of time to write more. So I've been writing on this project that I hope to bring to life, which is my own live performance thing that I hope to do with voices and electric piano. So we'll see what happens. So that's sort of a thing that I'm doing, and then I'm also writing songs for my band. My I have my own songwriting thing for my own songwriting project, and so that's been fun. And I was about to start writing for an opera in China, which would have been cool. And it would have been a 2-year project, but it seems like it fell apart because the person who wanted to do it, once he found out what it means to write a whole opera, it turned out he was more interested in just one act. And I think he wanted to make money, not an opera, you know. And so at that point, I was actually happy that it fell apart, because of money, because we wouldn't have wanted to work with somebody who didn't really want to do it for 2 years. You know, it's a long process.
Yeah, you need the commitment for that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, indeed.
Um, so there was something we started talking about before we pressed record, which was writer's block, and I kind of wanted you to talk about your opinion on that and what you do. I know that you don't believe in writer's block, but what do you do when you need some inspiration?
Well, yeah, I think that writer's block is something that happens when we're crafting, not when we're arting. Because if you're truly arting, then there's no question about what it is that you have to say. But when we're crafting toward other people's expectations, then it's easy to get locked up because you don't really know yet exactly where you're aiming. And at that point, if you're inexperienced, or if you don't have a lot of experience in writing like you yet, then it's hard to know what decisions to make and where to go with it. And so I think writer's block is something that happens more to somebody who's crafting toward expectations, more so than somebody who's writing from within. And so I don't believe that there is true writer's block, because if you really follow what you believe and the way that you want to hear it, the way you want to express it, I always say in my class, write to express, never to impress. And that to me is like the key to it all, because if you're just writing the way that you hear it, then there's no blocking you.
Hmm.
And once that nugget is there singing in your head, you can decide what style and how many players. Um, if you remember the blueprints that we used to do in my class, the 3-part blueprint that I'm so hell bent on, all my students making, because if that's there, it's very easy to make the melody into whatever you want. It could be the whole string section, or the whole string section and the woodwind section in harmony or not. That's the melody right there, and then you can choose what to do with the bass and the accompaniment. To me, if those components are present and alive and well in my head, then it's very easy to blow it up to big arrangement. But if I'm not really clear yet on what it is I'm doing, then it's easy to work for 30 hours orchestrating something that you don't know yet what it is. And I could assume that at some point in that process, somebody could think that they have writer's block because they don't really know where they're aiming. And so I think it's the wholesome approach to take for me, and I know that this is different for everybody, has always been to not touch the instrument. Don't touch the instrument. Don't touch it until you can hear what it is that you're making in your head. Then you can start to execute it. But until I'm done conceiving, like in my head, what it is that I'm making, I kind of don't want to make that move yet, because I know I can easily waste a lot of hours. And as you get older, you tend to want to measure 5 times and cut once.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so thank you so much for coming on today. It's been lovely to talk.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, Nadia. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode today. I hope you enjoyed the interview with Claes. All of his information will be found in the description for the episode, so you can find his music and website. I'll see you next time on The Composer's Life.